In Melissa's dream, she seems to be entering someone's mind, the female lead of a romance fantasy novel. The female lead realizes that she lives in a world formed by someone's writing, so every time someone reads the novel, the female lead has to relive her life over and over again. Some people read the entire novel, but some only read the first chapter, forcing the female lead to relive her life from the beginning repeatedly. This has been going on for a very long time, and it finally makes the female lead realize that she's just a character in a story. However, only the female lead is aware of this, forcing her to face alone the disgust of the continuous repetition of life. Melissa finally wakes up from her sleep, unconsciously shedding tears because she feels someone's sadness in her dream. Although Melissa doesn't know who the person in her dream is, she hopes that this time that person can find happiness. In the next scene, it shows the atmosphere of the Fodebrat family residence, which has entered late autumn. At that time, Melissa was enjoying the view while playing with her favorite dog, Leaf, in the garden. Knowing that she will soon be busy with important events in the novel, Melissa wants to enjoy herself with Leaf while she still can. According to the storyline in the novel, the story begins in spring and will end in the next spring. This means Melissa must prepare to face the climax events that will occur in winter. Many significant events will happen, so Melissa wants to satisfy herself by playing with Leaf for now. Seeing Melissa's behavior, running fast and jumping over plants, a maid reminds Melissa to stop because it's not proper for a noblewoman. Hearing this, Melissa thinks the maid must be new, because all the old maids are used to Melissa's tomboyish behavior. 9 also comes to stop Melissa, worried she might get hurt running like that while wearing a dress. Although Melissa has fully recovered since being injured in the fight with Mizzen, 9 has become more overprotective. For Melissa, running like that is nothing compared to the swordsmanship training she does with her new swordsmanship teacher. But seeing 9's expression as if he's about to cry, Melissa promises not to run anymore and will just walk. Melissa continues her walk with Leaf. In her heart, Melissa actually feels a bit disturbed by being treated like a fragile glass doll. Although 9 has experienced a power awakening, it doesn't mean Melissa has become weak, and 9 shouldn't worry about her as a villainess. Time passes and night falls. At the dinner table, Melissa suddenly screams that the Fodebrat family needs money, making the Duke choke when he hears it. Instead of helping, Yona asks if Melissa has finally squandered all of Fodebrat's assets, a question Melissa ignores. Then comes Haney, who gladly offers to help Melissa. Haney explains that although she doesn't have much money, if she sells his organs, the proceeds might help a bit. Of course, Melissa refuses such help. Melissa explains that it's true, the Fodebrat family is wealthy because of its many assets. But what surprises her is that Fodebrat only has a little savings, so the situation could be difficult if they suddenly need a lot of money. Therefore, Melissa offers the Duke if he's interested in doing a gold business. Entering into the novel where Melissa knows the entire story becomes an advantage. Therefore, now Melissa invites the Duke to mine gold, whose location Melissa already knows. In the original novel, the gold mine Melissa is talking about is actually the gold mine that Peacock Melody will discover in the upcoming spring and will be given to Yuri as a wedding gift. The Duke questions how Melissa knows about the gold mine and whether the information can be trusted. Melissa, in turn, asks if the Duke Fodebrat doesn't trust her. With confidence, Melissa says that the Duke must know that she never speaks empty words. But then, the Duke remains silent, indicating that he doesn't fully trust Melissa. Immediately, Melissa gives a map showing one location and asks the Duke to hire some miners to mine gold there, as Melissa has no connections in that area. And there it goes again, Yona adds to Melissa's anger, whispering that Melissa actually doesn't have any connections anywhere, not even among the nobility. The Duke starts studying the map, but his attention is disturbed by seeing Melissa looking at Yona. At that moment, Melissa wonders in her mind, who is Yona actually? And why does Yona have a magic ball that is worth many times more than all the money Melissa has ever given? The Duke calls Melissa to focus back on their conversation. Then the Duke explains that the location of the gold needs to be confirmed first before the gold mine construction can be done. So it will take some time before mining can begin. Hearing the Duke accepting his suggestion about the gold mine, and after finishing his dinner, Melissa quickly asks for permission to leave first and leaves the Duke to eat alone. Melissa actually knows that if she were a good child, she should accompany the Duke until he finished eating. But it turns out, in Melissa's mind, there is a memory of her childhood where Duke Fodabrat never paid attention to little Melissa, who actually wanted to be loved by her father. When a man doesn't become a father figure to a child, then when the child grows up, they still consider that man not as their father. Now Melissa has arrived in her room with Yona and Haney, while 9 is not there because he is on a business trip. Then Melissa invites them to discuss because Melissa has a request for them. The next morning, Melissa is practicing swordsmanship with Cartena. Cartena is a former female royal knight who is now Melissa's new swordsmanship teacher. At first, Cartena scolds Melissa for her fighting style, which is like a street fighter. Because if not elegant, it's difficult for Melissa to become a royal knight. Hearing that, Melissa is confused because her purpose in learning swordsmanship is not to become a royal knight, but because Melissa actually likes swordsmanship and it will be useful in real combat. Realizing her wrong assumption, Cartena apologizes to Melissa and promises to teach more effective swordsmanship techniques to be used in actual combat. Melissa asks Cartena not to think too much about it, and in return, Melissa makes a bet. If she wins, then Cartena has to tell her why she left the Order of Knights. Of course, the challenge is accepted by Cartena. A sword fight breaks out, but Melissa looks exhausted while Cartena seems fine. Melissa attacks using every technique she knows, from slicing to stabbing to digging up dirt and spraying it, but none of it works to defeat Cartena. The difference in sword fighting experience is significant. Just with the gleam of her sword, Cartena manages to make it difficult for Melissa to see, creating an opening for Cartena to land an attack. In this critical moment, a female servant suddenly calls Melissa's name in a panic, causing Cartena to stop her attack too. It turns out to be Haney's voice, who rushes in to report that a disaster has occurred. Melissa is relieved to have a savior come just when she's almost defeated. She stops the fight immediately to ask Haney what the problem is. Haney explains that the gold mine Melissa had her eye on has been taken over by the Peacock Guild. Somehow, they found out about the mine's location and bought it immediately. Melissa reacts calmly because she predicted this would happen, but she's surprised at how quickly the Peacock Guild acted. Melissa asks to end the swordsmanship training, and Cartena agrees, promising to continue their bet in the next training session. Melissa, 9, and Haney return to the house, where they are greeted by Yona, who suggests Melissa take a bath first before entering the room because she's very dirty. Haney offers to accompany and assist Melissa during her bath instead of just waiting outside the room. 9 also wants to join, but since it's not possible, he reluctantly waits outside alone. Long story short, after Melissa finishes cleaning up, a meeting is held attended by Melissa, Yona, 9, and Haney to discuss the Peacock incident where they managed to acquire the gold mine Melissa had targeted. Suddenly, Melissa concludes that it could happen because Peacock has spies within the Fodabrat residence, shocking Haney to hear Melissa's words. Melissa is already suspecting that Peacock has placed spies within the Fodabrat residence. This suspicion arises due to the lack of news or action from Peacock lately. Knowing Peacock's cunning nature, Melissa is sure Peacock won't just sit idly, especially after the incident at Yuri's residence, which hurts Peacock's pride. So it's very strange that there's been no retaliatory action from Peacock. Melissa believes that Peacock is still secretly watching everything Yuri and Melissa are doing. Quietly, Peacock is waiting for an opportunity, and when the time comes, he will seize it and destroy everything. This way, Peacock can become very wealthy. However, since there's no concrete evidence, Melissa sets a trap to confirm whether there really are spies in the Fodabrat residence. The trap is a fake gold mine. Actually, 9 discovered an empty mine a few days ago while carrying out a task from Melissa, so only 9 and Melissa know the real situation. However, Peacock quickly learns about the mine's location and immediately takes control of the area. This proves that there really are spies when Melissa reveals the location of the gold mine. Everyone begins to recall who was present when Melissa revealed the mine's location. Suddenly, Haney shouts out a name. Belinda, a new female servant who has been working and was beside the Duke during dinner. Yona asks if during their last meeting, Melissa was actually trying to identify the spy among them. Melissa replies, no, as their discussion at that time was to prepare for something else. 9, who is absent because he's on duty out of town, doesn't understand. And Melissa doesn't tell him anything after he returns from his duty of finding the gold mine's location. Melissa forgets to tell 9 about the last meeting, making 9 feel disappointed because he isn't included in the important meeting. A few moments later, only Melissa and 9 are left in the room. Melissa is still trying to persuade 9, who is sulking because Melissa forgot to tell him about the meeting's results. As an apology, Melissa promises to treat 9 to his favorite food. Next, Melissa explains that the real purpose of their current meeting is because she wants 9 to conduct an investigation. 9 is asked to secretly investigate the black market to find out who has recently bought poison, whether they are connected to the Peacock Guild, and what type of poison they have purchased. Melissa explains that she intentionally provoked Peacock by tricking them with the fake gold mine and letting Peacock's spy remain in the Fodabrate residence, in order to make Peacock desperate enough to try to kill her with poison. In the original novel, there is an incident where Peacock plans to assassinate Melissa. It is told that Melissa tries to build several businesses with the aim of financially defeating Yuri. However, all of Melissa's businesses fail because Peacock's company likes to destroy all small businesses. As a result, Melissa becomes more ridiculed for tarnishing the Fodabrat family name. Melissa becomes very angry and continues to disrupt the relationship between Peacock and Yuri. Since Melissa is always interfering with Yuri, Peacock plans to end Melissa's life. Back to the present, Melissa is still very excited to tell her plan to trap Peacock when they attempt to kill her. If her plan succeeds, not only will she free Yuri from Peacock, but Melissa hopes she can also get a lot of money. An attempted murder of a duke's daughter will surely be a serious crime, even for Peacock, who has so far managed to escape legal consequences due to his financial power. And Melissa will receive a lot of compensation for the damages caused by Peacock's crimes. Melissa has also told Yuri about her plan, so if the poison to be used is known, Yuri can prepare the appropriate antidote. But 9 interrupts Melissa's speech with an unhappy expression upon hearing a plan that could endanger Melissa's life. Melissa gives him reasons. If the type of poison can be identified, then she'll definitely be fine. But even if the type of poison used is unknown, Yuri will create various protective spells to safeguard Melissa's life, so she won't lose her life from drinking the poison. However, 9 still disagrees with Melissa's actions of always putting herself in danger. Even though Melissa is strong, she can still get hurt and die. And every time he sees Melissa taking risks, 9 feels so intensely helpless. Feeling treated as weak, Melissa explains. Even though she's not very clever, she also wouldn't do anything foolish. Like this plan, it will be executed because there's still a reliable guarantee of Melissa's survival. Melissa also emphasizes that 9 is her butler and her friend, so 9 doesn't have an obligation to protect Melissa. It's Melissa who should protect him as a master who brought 9 into the Fodabrat family. And Melissa herself will be responsible for all the consequences of her actions. Suddenly, 9 stands up and says he's willing to drink poison tea if ordered by Melissa, but he'd prefer if Melissa didn't drink any poison at all. 9 begins to walk away, saying he's ready to accept punishment because he can't do what Melissa asks of him right now. Then 9 asks for permission and leaves the room, leaving Melissa alone. The next day arrives. During the sword training break, Cartena asks Melissa if something happened between her and 9 because usually during the break, 9 would rush over to take care of all of Melissa's needs. But today, 9 just stayed at a distance. Melissa admits that she and 9 had a fight yesterday. Since then, 9 has just been doing his duties and hasn't said anything. Cartena sits down next to Melissa and asks for more details about what really happened. Melissa doesn't go into detail, but just gives a brief overview. After listening to the story, Cartena suggests that Melissa is someone who's slow to read the room. Cartena explains that 9 worries about Melissa not because he thinks she's weak, but because Melissa often does reckless things due to her strength. Unfortunately, Melissa still doesn't understand why something like that would make 9 angry. Cartena feels that Melissa will be difficult to make understand if only explained with words, so it has to be shown directly. Cartena immediately stops their break session and asks Melissa to get ready to continue their sword training. The clang of swords echoes loudly in Fadabrat's residence. It is Melissa and Cartena, locked in an intense sword practice session until Melissa unleashes her signature move, sending Cartena's sword flying and her crashing to the ground. Impressed by Melissa's natural swordsmanship, Cartena praises her, but Melissa suspects Cartena has deliberately taken a fall in their last exchange. As per their bet, since Melissa is winning, Cartena agrees to reveal why she left the Royal Knight forces for Robbie, one of Yuri's older brothers. Minutes earlier, Robbie arrives on his flying carpet to fetch Cartena. She explains that since Royal Knights aren't allowed to date, she bravely chooses to leave the ranks. Melissa recalls from the original novel that Yuri's eldest brother is married. Though they are mere supporting characters in this romance fantasy world, they still seem to have romantic lives. Cartena elaborates that a knight's life isn't as glamorous as she had thought. Feeling underestimated as a woman, she chooses to resign and vows to protect only Robbie. Melissa feels pressured by Cartena and Robbie's closeness, but Cartena assures her it's adorable how Robbie flies a carpet just to see her. Returning to their main discussion, Cartena explains that both she and Robbie know they are strong individuals. She from the Royal Order of Knights and Robbie, a sorcerer of the House of Elizabeth. Yet, they still worry about each other's safety more than their own, driven by emotions rather than logic. But it seems Melissa doesn't quite grasp Cartena's point, so Cartena bluntly points out examples of love. Nine, who despite their arguments, is silently watching over Melissa, and Melissa, who is stealing glances at Nine during practice. In other words, they like each other. 2 weeks later, at the Elizabeth family's home, Yuri is brewing a potion with unusual ingredients like lizard tail, unicorn horn, and fairy wings. Melissa worries about the potion's color, but Yuri assures her it's a magic antidote. Melissa will resign herself to drink it, trusting it will keep her alive. Yuri asks about Melissa's plans regarding the spy in their midst. Melissa has no plans but believes the spy hasn't realized they've been discovered yet. Yuri thinks Melissa seems willing to forgive the spy despite having once beaten up a spy caught in their home. Melissa defends herself, saying the spy had crossed the line by entering Yuri's room, and Yuri's eldest brother has dealt the harshest blows. Yuri also asks if the type of poison is known. Though it isn't, Yuri promises to make the most potent magical herb to ensure Melissa's safety. But Melissa remains silent, lost in her thoughts, remembering Cartena's words about her liking Nine, her face flushing at the thought. Turns out, when Cartena finished saying that Nine and Melissa like each other, Melissa and Nine accidentally locked eyes. Nine gazes at Melissa with affection, though he quickly shifts his gaze realizing he's actually mad at her. Seeing this, Melissa realizes Cartena was right. After that incident, Melissa becomes more aware of her feelings for Nine. However, since Melissa has never been in a romantic relationship before, she doesn't know what to do. She even makes excuses to go to Yuri's house just to avoid Nine. Yuri notices Melissa's unusual behavior, especially coming to the house without Nine, her loyal servant who always accompanies her. But Melissa assures everything is fine. Yuri still suspects something is up with Melissa, so she suggests Melissa sorts out her issues before their planned tea party with Peacock. Melissa thinks it's a good idea and decides she won't be bothered by those issues once they're resolved. She stands up and bids goodbye, feeling reinvigorated to face her problems head-on so she can get what she wants. Whether it's changing the ending of the novel or her relationship with someone, Yuri feels a bit sad seeing Melissa leave but continues working, promising to make the perfect antidote. Sometime later, the scene shifts to a warehouse with many wooden crates, where a woman is hiding in the darkness. She regrets her decision to accept Peacock's offer, especially now that she's being asked to do something she doesn't want to do. Back then, Peacock offered her a position as a maid in a nobleman's house, so she could provide information when needed. Thanks to Peacock's help, her younger siblings survived, and she wonders about the danger of giving Peacock information. Now, she regrets working as a spy for Peacock because she's being asked to do something terrible. But back then, she couldn't refuse Peacock's offer because it was for her siblings and herself. She thinks if she knew she'd be asked to do something terrible, she wouldn't have befriended her target, Melissa. But it turns out, she enjoys being friends with Melissa, who is strong and brilliant. In the letter, Peacock orders the spy to confess to being the murderer of Melissa Fodebra, threatening her family's safety if she doesn't comply. The woman is torn between fearing for her family's safety and her fondness for Melissa. Suddenly, someone opens the door to the warehouse, revealing Melissa, who is searching for the spy, Haney. Haney quickly excuses her teary eyes as dust irritation, but Melissa still asks if Haney wants to confess something to her, indicating Melissa already knows who the real spy is. This makes Haney cry even more as she confesses her mistakes. A moment later, Melissa goes into detective mode. She explains that she suspects Haney is a spy because the Fodebrat family rarely hires new employees, and the last one wasn't hired to work for Melissa. The spy for Peacock must be someone who has worked for Melissa for a while, or someone close to her, but can be bribed. Yona's weakness is money, but Yona and Melissa have already defeated Peacock together. And as for 9, it's highly unlikely he can be bribed to betray Melissa. So, that leaves only Haney as the possible spy. Hearing Melissa's explanation, Yona teases her for relying on intuition without solid evidence, embarrassing Melissa for her detective skills. Back to the main topic, Melissa asks Haney if all her sweet words and good deeds were just an act. Of course, Haney assures her they were genuine. In her heart, Melissa believes Haney isn't evil, just someone with a tough background. However, Haney is clever because she quickly accused another servant when she first heard Melissa talk about a spy in their house. Haney apologizes tearfully, and surprisingly, Melissa forgives her. For Melissa, she believes Haney's good deeds weren't entirely fake, but she warns her not to betray her trust again. Haney is deeply moved by being forgiven and is ready to accept punishment. However, for Melissa, it's difficult to punish someone, especially after forgiving them. Melissa says they'll think about the punishment later, and as a form of redemption, she orders Haney to do what was asked in Peacock's letter. Of course, Haney is shocked to hear this, but Melissa explains again that Haney must kill Melissa and confess her actions to trap Peacock. Sometime later, during Melissa's sword training session, Melissa appears worried because 9 isn't present as usual. Cartana notices Melissa's concern, but when asked, Melissa denies thinking about 9's whereabouts. Melissa is slightly annoyed by Cartana's earlier remark. All preparations have gone according to plan. Yuri's cure-all antidote has been successfully made, and the spy has been captured, meaning Melissa's team is ready to launch a counterattack on Peacock. However, Melissa now avoids 9 more often because of Cartana's words. And to complicate matters further, 9 is also avoiding Melissa. Cartana chuckles at Melissa's expense and suggests she shouldn't feel embarrassed. Melissa jokes back, saying Cartana should worry more about herself because now Melissa feels like firing all her staff for causing her headaches. Cartana laughs at this and retorts that if she gets fired, she'll just leave with Robbie to build the beautiful household of her dreams. Melissa gets even more annoyed because her threat didn't work. Seeing Melissa's scary expression, Cartana quickly apologizes and explains she was only joking. Melissa tries to contain her anger and refocuses on her sword training. She decides to make amends with 9 after the training session. Melissa takes her magic sword to practice. Cartana knows the magic sword isn't just any ordinary sword because it emits a tremendous amount of energy, making it somewhat intimidating for training. But Melissa is determined to win the training session to vent her frustrations. Realizing her joke may have gone too far, Cartana apologizes again. Melissa retorts that Cartana is too quick to apologize, while others need days to figure out how to apologize nicely. Hearing her own words, Melissa realizes she should apologize to 9 herself to mend their relationship back to normal. Rather than just venting her anger at innocent people, she should address the main issue. Melissa realizes she hasn't even decided what kind of relationship she wants with 9, and vice versa. If she doesn't know, then Melissa figures she should just ask him directly. Melissa asks Cartana for permission to end her sword training session, which Cartana allows on the condition that there will be a makeup class later. Melissa immediately goes to find 9. Inside the house, 9 is sitting alone in his room, lost in thought, when suddenly he's approached by Yona, who's worried about him. Even though 9 says there's nothing wrong, Yona points out that it's obvious 9 and Melissa are arguing because they haven't been talking lately. 9 explains that he feels like he's crossed a line by defying Melissa's orders. Now that Melissa keeps avoiding him, 9 feels like she doesn't want to see him anymore. In her mind, Yona thinks 9 actually wants to apologize but lacks the courage, especially after Melissa has been avoiding him, making 9 feel ignored. Yona tells 9 she's sure Melissa wouldn't just leave him like that, but 9 still feels hopeless and is ready to accept Melissa's orders, even if it means leaving her. But suddenly, they hear Melissa calling out 9's name. 9 pauses for a moment, and Yona urges him to go meet Melissa, who has called for him. 9 rushes as fast as he can, out of breath from shock and panic. It turns out, Melissa is also running toward 9, inviting him out on a date. Melissa is out of breath after running, while 9 feels puzzled about Melissa's sudden invitation. Melissa suggests they go out right away and try some delicious food at a restaurant so they can eat and chat together. Of course, 9 feels thrilled by the invitation, but he tries not to get too carried away so he won't make mistakes like before when he opposed Melissa's request. Seeing 9 staying silent, Melissa becomes anxious and asks if 9 doesn't accept her invitation. With her heart pounding and her face flushed, 9 answers that of course he wants to go because he loves good food. The thought of going out on a date makes both Melissa and 9 feel extremely awkward, and their hearts beat so fast it feels like they might explode. A little while later, 9 and Melissa are on a horse-drawn carriage. Unfortunately, they realize they don't know where to go because neither of them has ever gone out to eat before. 9 says he'll be happy to eat anything, even if it's just street food. But Melissa doesn't want that, so she feels she must rely on her passive skill, luck, to find a good restaurant. When the carriage passes by a restaurant, Melissa immediately asks the carriage driver to stop there. A few moments later, when they get off the carriage, once again, 9 is surprised but pleased by Melissa's behavior because she helps him get off the carriage. Inside the restaurant, the interior is decorated with heart-shaped accessories and everything is pink. Seeing this, Melissa remembers Duke's room decorated with a similar theme. Melissa regrets her luck for finding a restaurant with such a strange atmosphere. The restaurant waiter arrives and explains that the restaurant is currently holding a special event aimed at couples like 9 and Melissa. Worried about feeling uncomfortable, Melissa asks if 9 wants to move somewhere else. 9 says it's up to Melissa if she wants to move, but from 9's blushing face, it's evident that he likes the restaurant, even when the waiter mistakenly assumes 9 and Melissa are a couple. Seeing this, Melissa decides to stay at the restaurant. As they sit at the table, Melissa's mind wanders, realizing that she used to think 9 was always nice to her because of his genuine nature. But now Melissa realizes that perhaps 9 has liked her all this time, explaining his kindness. Melissa, who has been single for so long, gets lost in her thoughts because there's a guy who likes her, making her feel embarrassed and nervous. After calming herself down and returning to her senses, Melissa asks 9 what food he wants to order. Surprisingly, 9 has already ordered his food because Melissa has been silent and lost in thought all this time. It turns out Melissa was lost in her thoughts for quite a while. After regaining her composure, Melissa starts to speak seriously. She apologizes for being angry with 9 earlier because she didn't understand 9's worries, so she spoke harshly. Hearing this, 9 says he should be the one apologizing for not understanding Melissa's intentions. 9 promises he won't act like that again because he's Melissa's loyal butler. Melissa is somewhat surprised by 9's statement, as it suggests that 9 is now setting boundaries in their relationship. But suddenly, Melissa asks if 9 likes her. In this tense moment, the waiter arrives with the ordered food. However, the waiter quickly realizes the timing is off and hurriedly excuses himself so 9 and Melissa can finish their conversation first. 9 is silent for a moment, causing Melissa to wonder if 9 hasn't heard her question. As Melissa is about to repeat herself, 9 replies that he has heard Melissa's words clearly. 9 further explains that he has actually already given his answer before. It's just that Melissa doesn't listen to what 9 has said before. 9 stands up and walks over to Melissa. He says he really likes Melissa. They lock eyes, and 9 gently holds Melissa's neck. In his mind, 9 wants to kiss Melissa's lips. As time passes, 9's face draws closer to Melissa's, but suddenly, Melissa calls 9's name with a questioning tone. 9 instantly snaps out of it and quickly apologizes for his behavior. 9 reassures Melissa that he does indeed like her, but if Melissa isn't comfortable with that, 9 is willing to hide his feelings. 9 just begs that he can still remain close to Melissa. The next day, during sword training, Cartena asks Melissa about her date yesterday. Melissa replies that they only ended up getting delicious steak at a restaurant. Cartena is curious why Melissa didn't end up with a boyfriend. Melissa teases Cartena about being disappointed, even though Cartena probably went on a date yesterday too since training was cancelled. Cartena is impressed that Melissa's guess is correct and is about to start talking about her intimacy with Robbie. But Melissa quickly asks to start the sword training right away. As they prepare for training, Melissa and 9 accidentally lock eyes. 9 uses his affectionate gaze and whispers from a distance for Melissa to be careful, making Melissa blush. It turned out that yesterday when 9 expressed his feelings, Melissa was so panicked that she forgot to breathe. Seeing Melissa's expression like that, 9 asked Melissa to forget what he had just said. But Melissa responded that she didn't want to forget it and didn't mind if 9 had feelings for her because it was everyone's right to like someone. However, Melissa admitted that for then, she didn't have the confidence to give the kind of relationship 9 wanted. Hearing Melissa's back-and-forth response left 9 slightly disappointed. But 9 didn't pressure Melissa to respond to his current feelings. 9 was ready to wait. And when Melissa was ready, 9 would express his feelings again, better than just saying "I like you, Melissa." Melissa froze, hearing 9's now quite adept sweet talk. A while later, Yuri comes to the Fadabrat residence to inform Melissa that the tea party invitation from Peacock has been accepted by Yuri. In the invitation, Peacock even writes that if Yuri wants to invite Melissa, it will be allowed. Yuri explains that since 9 already knows the type of poison that will be used, Yuri has successfully created the perfect antidote, although Yuri feels that even without 9, his own abilities are sufficient. 9 responds to Yuri's sarcasm by saying that Yuri shouldn't be careless and risk others' lives. Seeing their argument, Melissa doesn't understand why Yuri and 9 find it difficult to get along, and next, Melissa invites her team to prepare to hunt down the arrogant Peacock. Time flies and the day of the tea party finally arrives. Melissa and her team, consisting of Yona, 9, and Haney, are ready to depart. Melissa reassures Haney not to worry because Melissa will protect Haney's family. So Haney just needs to do as she's asked. In the carriage, Melissa asks the coachman how long the journey will take. The coachman replies that it usually takes 1 to 2 hours, but since he's chosen the fastest and best horse for today, he expects they will arrive sooner. Melissa doesn't mind the trip being shorter until she suddenly realizes something. Worried, she asks if the horse the coachman mentioned is the same one she rode during the hunting tournament. Indeed, it is, the Black Veil, the black horse. The coachman explains that ever since Melissa tamed Black Veil, the horse has become gentler and suitable for various tasks, which is why he's pulling the carriage now. Melissa suddenly remembers her broken promise to Black Veil about letting him chew Jake's hair. Sure enough, Black Veil holds a grudge for this broken promise and plans to get his revenge. As the carriage starts moving, Black Veil pulls it with all his strength. A short while later, Melissa's team arrives at their destination. Haney is sprawled on the ground, feeling nauseous because of Black Veil's high-speed pulling. Melissa feels like it was her first time riding a carriage as fast as a sports car. Black Veil, though exhausted, seems satisfied to have exacted his revenge and gone wild. Only Melissa and 9 are unscathed. Throughout the harrowing journey, 9 held Melissa close to protect her. However, the others, including Yona and the coachman, need a rest to recover their senses. From the entrance gate, Peacock's mansion exudes luxury. Even the jewel roses previously rejected by Yuri are now used to adorn the garden. Melissa's team waits at the gate until a panicked servant hurries over to greet them, apologizing for the delay since Melissa arrived earlier than expected. Melissa dismisses the tardiness and just asks to be let in. The servant agrees but gives Haney a suspicious glance. Inside the house, rare paintings and luxurious decorations fill the space. The highlight is an exquisite indoor greenhouse garden. Peacock is already there, welcoming Melissa. Melissa returns the greeting with her best expression, even though she secretly loathes Peacock. It's clear Peacock feels the same way. Peacock shows Melissa to the tea party area. Since Melissa is an hour early, Peacock invites her to sit and wait. The atmosphere becomes awkward as the two people who despise each other sit together in silence. Melissa finds it strange to be with Peacock, who seems like he will stay until Yuri arrives. Melissa mentally curses Black Veil for making her arrive too early and prays for Yuri to arrive soon. Eventually, Yuri arrives. Both Melissa and Peacock stand to greet Yuri simultaneously, making them both feel disgusted at their synchronization. Yuri, taking the initiative, sits next to Melissa, which irritates Peacock. Peacock formally thanks and welcomes Melissa and Yuri to the tea party. However, Melissa can tell that while Peacock's words are directed at both of them, his eyes are obsessively fixed on Yuri, making Yuri uncomfortable. With his wild eyes, Peacock eyes Yuri's entire body. Melissa feels utterly disgusted by Peacock's behavior. Furious, Melissa considers abandoning her plan to trap Peacock and just beating him up right then and there. However, Yuri grabs her hand, whispering that it's okay, and that she trusts Melissa's plan will work. Thanks to Yuri, Melissa manages to calm down. She thanks Peacock for the invitation. Peacock snaps his fingers, signaling a servant to bring out the special tea for the event. Peacock explains that he feels Melissa doesn't trust the tea poured by his servants, so he will allow Melissa's servant to pour it instead. Haney, slightly trembling with fear, pours the tea for Melissa. As Melissa stares at her tea for a moment, Peacock taunts her, asking if she's worried it's cheap tea. Melissa responds, saying she's considering whether the tea is poisoned. Peacock tries to reassure her that it's just her unfounded fear. Melissa decides to drink the tea. As she does, everyone tenses up. Peacock smirks, pleased to see Melissa drinking it, but Nine is visibly seething. After drinking the tea, Melissa's teacup shatters on the floor as she begins coughing up blood. Now, let's dive into Yuri's past. There were times when Yuri tried to escape the original storyline, but every time she failed and was recaptured, like a bird in a cage. When Peacock captured Yuri, he treated Yuri like a pet bird, caring for her well but denying her freedom. Peacock assured Yuri that noblemen were no good for her. Peacock revealed that he was also part noble by blood, but received nothing but betrayal and misery from them. As an illegitimate child, Peacock saw himself and Yuri as being in the same boat. Back to the present, where Melissa lies on the floor, blood staining her mouth. Yuri rushes to her, worried despite knowing this was coming. Peacock approaches Yuri, claiming ignorance of what's happening. Yuri becomes angry, accusing Peacock of shamelessness, as Melissa collapsed after drinking Peacock's tea. To prove his innocence, Peacock drinks from his own cup and remains fine. Yuri knows in her heart that Melissa predicted Peacock would poison the cup, not the tea itself, so everything is going according to plan. Peacock suggests that perhaps one of Melissa's own servants, holding a grudge against her, poisoned her tea. Yuri retorts that this is nonsense, angering Peacock, who threatens Yuri, saying no one can help her there. Nine, Yona, and Haney are surrounded by Peacock's servants, unable to act. At this point, Yuri becomes worried, wondering why Melissa hasn't woken up from her faint. She starts to doubt whether her magical herbal concoction failed to save her. Convinced the formula was perfect, she wonders if it failed because she tried to deviate from the original novel's plot. Believing she caused Melissa's death, Yuri sheds tears. Seeing Yuri's despair, Peacock is pleased. He professes his love for Yuri, vowing to do anything for her. Peacock promises never to toy with or abandon Yuri, so all Yuri needs to do is stay by his side. If Yuri tries to run away, Peacock will bind her legs. If Yuri causes trouble, Peacock will cut out her tongue. And if Yuri whispers sweet words to another man, Peacock will behead that man. Yuri is utterly despondent, feeling once again that she has failed to change his fate. But suddenly, Melissa's voice breaks the silence, telling Peacock to take his nonsense to jail with him. As she speaks, Melissa readies herself to punch Peacock. Melissa lands a punch that sends Peacock flying across the room. As he hits the floor, Peacock is shocked to see Melissa still alive. Melissa tells him she isn't interested in hearing about his past. No matter how bad it was, it doesn't justify the evil things he's doing now. No one is obligated to fulfill Peacock's wishes or love him. Yuri is her own person, so Peacock needs to stop brainwashing her with his personal issues to force her to accept him. But Peacock isn't listening to anything Melissa says. He's only focused on why she's still alive. Melissa explains that she is resistant to poisons like the one he used. Peacock laughs off her claim about the poison in the tea because he has drunk it too, and is fine. The only difference is who poured the tea for Melissa. Hearing this, Melissa asks Haney to explain what happened. Peacock glares at Haney, making her scared. Haney then confesses that it's true she is at fault. Peacock is pleased and verbally attacks Melissa, accusing her of making baseless accusations. However, Haney continues, explaining that her fault lies in being a spy for Peacock while working as a servant in Melissa's household. She admits she is guilty of hesitating to warn Melissa about Peacock's plan to poison her. Melissa hugs the trembling Haney and whispers that her family has been rescued and is safe at the Fodebrad estate. She reassures Haney that she is stronger than Peacock, so there is no need to fear telling the truth. Peacock is furious at Haney's betrayal, but Haney, filled with determination, replies that she has already betrayed Melissa once, so betraying the evil Peacock is nothing. She also mentions having all the orders Peacock sent her as evidence of his crimes. Melissa adds that she also has detailed proof and witnesses regarding Peacock's purchase of the poison. At the height of his anger, Peacock starts laughing like a madman. He rings a bell, and soon the room is filled with masked individuals he has hired. They point their swords at Melissa and Haney. But Melissa remains calm and even asks why Peacock allows them to cover their faces. Peacock, thinking she is just stalling, orders the attack on Melissa. To Peacock's shock, the mercenaries don't attack Melissa, but instead sheath their swords and turn their weapons toward Peacock. One of the masked men removes his mask, revealing himself to be Jake, Melissa's brother and a member of the royal guard. Melissa laughs at Peacock's failure to recognize the true identities of his hired thugs. Jake announces he has heard all of Peacock's crimes, and is there to arrest him. Peacock can't believe how Melissa has planned everything. He accuses her of trapping him and, in a fit of rage, pulls a pistol from his clothes and fires at Melissa. Peacock laughs at what he sees next. Nine and Yuri immediately move to shield Melissa. Using her magic, Yuri stops the bullet midair. Seeing this, Peacock questions Yuri, asking why she is siding with Melissa, the villainess. Yuri is supposed to be his. Yuri responds that she has never belonged to Peacock or anyone else. She belongs to herself. Peacock's hands are tied, and he is set to face trial for the attempted murder of a noble's daughter, Duke Fodebrat's daughter. Melissa tells him that all of his wealth won't save him from punishment and that he will have to compensate for all the claims she is going to file against him. In her mind, Melissa is laughing happily because she managed to imprison someone she despises and will also receive a hefty compensation. Peacock's servants are also arrested for being accomplices in his criminal plans. Just as Melissa thinks everything is settled, she notices Yuri looking lost in thought. Melissa asks if Yuri is okay and thanks her because Yuri's magic herbal concoction helped make her plan successful. Yuri says she's fine, but in reality, the god of the novel is communicating with her. The god keeps urging Yuri to return to the original storyline and side with the male lead. Yuri has always felt trapped under the control of the god, as if she were a bird in a cage. But now, like a miracle, Melissa has come to open the cage door and free Yuri from her chains. Taking advantage of this moment, Yuri is determined to become stronger, so she can continue to decide her own fate. She thanks Melissa for all her help in dealing with Peacock, which Melissa happily accepts. Yuri also mentions that Jake's behavior has changed. He no longer stalks her and seems uninterested in her. Time passes and winter arrives. From her bedroom window, Melissa watches the snowflakes begin to fall. Seeing this, Nine adds more firewood to keep the room warmer. From behind her desk, Melissa watches Nine working by the fireplace. Initially, she thought of Nine as just a submissive, good-looking canine hybrid. But looking more closely now, Melissa finds Nine very handsome and magnificent with his hair and eye color. She realizes that this is exactly her type. Nine notices Melissa staring at him, making her quickly go back to writing at her desk. She's actually thinking about how to handle the original novel's climax, which is about to happen. The climax event involves a big war against a monster invasion. It seems the novel's author designed this event to create a difficult period in the story and highlight the importance of the male lead's power before ultimately leading to a happy ending. Since this main event is meant to showcase the male lead's strength, it should be easy if the story follows the original novel. However, things are different now since Melissa has changed the course of the story. Firstly, Melissa now has the magic sword, which Ian is supposed to use against the monsters. It would be weird and suspicious if she suddenly handed it over to Ian because he is supposed to be the hero. Jake, the sniper, isn't the same as before without his beloved weapon. Jack, the werewolf, has shown personal growth, but he hasn't yet experienced his awakening. One good thing Melissa has is a lot of money from Peacock, which she can use to fund the war. Melissa is stressed thinking about what will happen next, though she doesn't regret her current situation. Relying on the crazy male leads would never lead to a happy ending. In the midst of her worries, Nine suddenly brings her a cup of drink. Seeing Nine's handsome face cheers Melissa up, and she doesn't regret all the changes in the story. Now, she just needs to deal with the consequences of her actions. In another room at the Fadabra estate, two people are talking through a magic orb. It's Yona informing Yuri that Haney has been dismissed from the Fadabrat residence because a spy cannot be allowed in a duke's house. However, Melissa wrote a recommendation letter for Haney, allowing her to work at the largest restaurant in the city. Before leaving, Haney was very grateful for Melissa's kindness. Yuri is happy to hear about Melissa's good deeds. However, the god is still nagging Yuri to stick to the original story. The god warns Yuri that she's too involved with the villainess, and should be worried since none of the male leads are currently connected to her. But Yuri ignores the god's words. Yuri promises to contact Yona again if something happens, but Yona begs her not to. Yuri reassures her that they're just sharing information, not spying. The real issue is that Yona wants to be paid for any future help. Yuri thinks Yona is too focused on money and suggests she join the temple, so she wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. Yona isn't interested and doesn't see the point. Before Yuri can respond, Melissa calls Yona, prompting her to quickly end the conversation. After the orb goes dark, Yuri talks to herself, saying that Yona should join the temple because she knows Yona is the only person the god truly cares about. Melissa has to get ready for the main event that's about to happen. Along with Yona and Nine, she heads to the Duke's room for a discussion. Inside, Melissa thinks to herself that she doesn't want to be a war hero. But in the original novel, her character is careless and incompetent, leading to her own injury and the death of several Fadabrat family workers, including Yona. Now, Melissa is determined to save her people. The Duke is shocked to hear about the imminent large-scale monster attack. Melissa explains that she will do her best to stop the attack, but she won't be enough on her own. She suggests asking the imperial family for help to mobilize the entire army. The Duke finds it hard to trust Melissa's words immediately. Melissa realizes how pathetic it is that her authority comes only from being the Duke's daughter, while her younger brother Jake has his own authority as the captain of the royal assassins. Melissa is just an unemployed girl born with a golden spoon. Melissa struggles to convince the Duke, but suddenly Yona speaks up. There was an oracle warning about the monster attack, and Yona assures that she also heard the oracle. Surprisingly, the Duke believes Yona right away. Melissa is puzzled by how Yona knew about the monster attack and suspects Yona might know the true storyline of the original novel. But when the Duke asks for details about the oracle, Yona directs him to Melissa, claiming she heard the oracle together with her, revealing that Yona was actually lying. The Duke is shocked to learn his daughter can receive oracles. Meanwhile, Melissa panics and whispers to Yona that she knows nothing about an oracle. Yona reassures her that she can explain whatever she wants now. Taking advantage of Yona's lie, Melissa quickly explains the location of the impending attack to the Duke. After the meeting with the Duke, Melissa corners Yona to ask why the Duke trusts her so easily about the Oracle. Yona takes a deep breath, indicating she's reluctant to delve deeper. Melissa realizes she only knows Yona comes from the fallen noble family of Baron Whitefall, which led to her becoming Melissa's maid. She doesn't know much about Yona's background since it wasn't detailed in the novel. Considering Yona's past might be sensitive, Melissa tells Yona she doesn't need to explain if she doesn't want to and promises not to push further. However, Yona asks what Melissa thinks when she hears the word Oracle. Melissa doesn't understand Yona's question, as she doesn't find anything special about it, especially since she doesn't believe in gods. Hearing this, Yona shows a blank expression as if she's disappointed with Melissa. Yona then continues, explaining that in this world there is an entity like a god, but it's a jerk. She used to be the link between humans and this god, and people called her Saintess Yona, always asking her to pray for them. But Yona hated that life and ran away from the temple. Some people still remember Yona's past and think she can still communicate with the god. Melissa thinks to herself that Yona must be a favorite character of the novel's author. Understanding Yona's past, Melissa stops asking questions and acts as usual. She invites Nine and Yona to eat, while they plan how to prevent the destruction from the monster attack. Yona smiles, pleased that Melissa is treating her the same after hearing her story. The next day, Melissa is informed by the Duke that she's to come to the palace. Apparently, the Duke has told the Emperor that Melissa received an oracle, so the Emperor wants to hear directly from her. Especially since an oracle only comes once every few decades. Melissa panics because she knows nothing about oracles. She's just going along with Yona's lie. The Duke is a bit disappointed to see Melissa reluctant to go to the palace, mentioning how she used to go there almost every day. Hearing this, Melissa realizes the Duke hasn't noticed she's been avoiding the Crown Prince. She excuses herself, saying she's a bit reluctant because she has to attend a noble's meeting. In reality, Melissa doesn't want to go to the meeting because it's just a gossip group attended by the Emperor and the heads of noble families. They'll likely belittle Melissa for being a woman. However, the Duke reassures her that the Emperor eagerly awaits her presence, and that he's proud to know his daughter is also a saintess. If all goes well, maybe the Emperor will allow Melissa to decide on her marriage. Deep down, Melissa hopes for no marriage at all. Melissa dislikes the Emperor because he laughs off his son, Ian's promiscuous behavior as typical male mischief. She has to muster her inner strength to contain her anger, thinking the Emperor's real aim is to prevent her from breaking off the engagement with Ian. But since the Duke already confirmed Melissa's attendance to the Emperor, she has no choice but to go. Melissa resigns herself to it, hoping this meeting can be a good opportunity to prepare for the monster attack. Later, Melissa is trying to decide what gown to wear for the meeting with the Emperor. She's torn, but Nine reassures her that she'll look great in anything, and nothing can hide her majestic aura. Melissa isn't interested in wearing a fancy gown to meet the Emperor. Fancy dresses are uncomfortable, and she'll already be stressed during the meeting. Adding a tight corset and a heavy gown would only make her miserable. After some thought, Melissa picks out a more practical outfit from her closet. Nine and Yona agree with her choice. Time passes, and the day of the meeting arrives. The Duke waits outside the house to board the carriage. However, he's shocked when Melissa steps out of the house. The Duke advises Melissa to wear something less attention-grabbing, but she stands by her choice, not wanting to look ordinary when meeting the Emperor. Melissa gets into her carriage while the Duke takes his own. Inside, Melissa double-checks with Nine to ensure the horse pulling her carriage isn't the crazy Black Veil. Nine confirms it isn't, and Melissa feels relieved. As the carriage starts moving, Melissa suddenly hears a familiar neigh. Sure enough, when she looks out the window, Black Veil is racing ahead, pulling the Duke's carriage. Black Veil begins to unleash his wild energy. While inside the carriage, the Duke struggles to survive the intense jolts. Melissa is also shocked to see Jake sitting on top of the carriage roof. She has no idea what Jake is planning and just hopes the Duke will be okay with Jake there. With lightning speed, the Duke's carriage overtakes and leaves Melissa's carriage far behind. Upon arriving at the palace, many nobles are already gathered in the meeting room. When the Duke and Melissa enter, she feels all eyes on her, none of them friendly. The Duke directs Melissa to sit for now since her turn to speak will be at the end of the event. He takes his seat, trying to suppress his nausea from the ride. But suddenly, Melissa is stunned when she sees who sits next to her. It's Jake. Melissa asks why Jake is there, since he usually hates attending these kinds of meetings. She even teases him, asking if he's suddenly interested in politics or if he missed the nobles. But to her shock, Jake calls her Nuna, big sister, and says he's there because he knew it was her first time at such a meeting, and because Ian would be there too. Melissa feels that Jake's behavior has changed but doesn't understand why he's bringing up Ian. She just thinks Jake wants to see Ian since they're good friends. The Emperor finally arrives and the meeting begins. After observing the conversation between the Emperor, the Crown Prince, and the nobles, Melissa realizes why she, someone without an official title, is there. Nothing important is being discussed. The meeting is just a gossip group, so Melissa feels that whatever she reveals later will also be considered the same as gossip. Ian sees Melissa and greets her with a distant whisper. Melissa smiles and responds with a distant whisper, asking to cancel their engagement. Ian quickly looks away to avoid Melissa's request. Melissa is sure Ian is worried about losing political support if their engagement is cancelled, making it hard for him to convince his mother that his position as emperor is secure. Ian's mother was once a lady-in-waiting who became empress because the emperor favored her, but her position could be taken away if Ian fails to become emperor. Melissa gets annoyed again thinking about it. Ian stands to lose more if their engagement is broken, yet he's the one cheating around. Then Jake nudges Melissa's arm to let her know it's almost her turn to speak. The emperor then asks Melissa to share the oracle she received. Melissa stands up and announces that soon, the monsters will break free from the seal imprisoning them. Instantly, everyone erupts in disbelief, questioning the validity of her statement. The nobles don't believe her because Melissa isn't a saintess, and they think it's just a prank. Melissa is frustrated by the nobles attacking her with words. The emperor just smiles, enjoying the spectacle, making Melissa realize she has to get out of this mess on her own. Melissa slams the table and explains that even if they don't believe her, it would be wise to prepare for the possible resurgence of the monsters. The monsters have been sealed for 150 years, and the Grand Sorcerer who cast the seal is long gone. It's unknown if there's a sorcerer now capable of such magic. The country has been at peace for so long that security is no longer a priority. It's like the calm before the storm, so Melissa suggests preparing the soldiers. But the nobles ignore her words. They continue to accuse Melissa of pranking and being disrespectful in front of the emperor. Melissa feels hopeless about getting help from the kingdom and the nobles. She had expected this reaction but still feels disappointed. Suddenly, a gunshot startles everyone in the meeting. It's Jake, who fired his rifle and ordered everyone to be quiet because his Nuna is speaking. Melissa is shocked by Jake's act of defending her. Then Jake looks at Melissa but quickly sits down and pulls his hood over his head. Everyone falls silent and Melissa worries that Jake might lose his position for using a weapon in front of the emperor. But the emperor laughs, not expecting Jake to stand up for his sister. Melissa feels a bit relieved because the emperor isn't mad at Jake. Ian also apologizes to everyone present and asks them to understand Jake's actions as he's a close friend. Naturally, all the noble family heads comply with the Crown Prince's request. Ian glances briefly at Melissa before stating that he agrees with her opinion. Even if the monster seal might not break anytime soon, Ian believes that preparing the soldiers is a wise decision. Therefore, he will work on improving the soldiers' readiness. Melissa is quite surprised that Ian is willing to support her. Thanks to Ian's prudent actions, the meeting concludes with the kingdom deciding to support the preparation of soldiers under Ian's leadership. Now, Melissa is making further preparations with the help of Yuri and Robbie, Yuri's older brother. Robbie is writing a teleportation spell on the floor. Yuri wishes she could cast teleportation magic too, but Melissa reassures her that she's already been a huge help, especially with her unmatched healing magic. However, Yuri still feels unsatisfied, wanting to do more to assist Melissa. Robbie encourages Yuri to trust his magic skills, announcing that the magic circle is ready. While talking, Robbie accidentally locks eyes with Melissa, recalling the embarrassing moment he had with Cartena in front of Melissa. Flustered, Robbie asks Melissa not to look at him. Melissa teases him, asking if he doesn't want to be seen by others because he belongs only to Cartena, making Robbie even more embarrassed. Suddenly, Nine leans his face close to Melissa's, as if saying she should look at him instead of Robbie. Melissa finds it amusing and pats Nine's head, leaving Robbie and Yuri speechless at the display of affection. Moments later, Robbie successfully activates the teleportation circle, targeting the werewolf forest entrance. Melissa, Nine, Yona, and Yuri step into the circle and teleport. The monster attack will impact the entire kingdom, including the werewolf forest. In the original storyline, Jack, the chief of the werewolves, joins the battle for Yuri. But now, things are different, so Melissa must convince the werewolves to join the fight against the monsters on her own. The team successfully teleports and sees the werewolf forest, now covered in snow as winter has arrived. Nine reports that all illusion charms have been deactivated, thanks to a letter Melissa sent to the werewolf palace a month ago, eliminating the need to worry about numerous magical traps. Melissa then shouts for a werewolf representative to come out and grant them entry into the forest, but no one shows up. Seeing this, Nine uses his power to shout something that Melissa cannot hear. Werewolves communicate using high tones inaudible to humans. If a werewolf's tongue is cut, their ability to communicate is entirely destroyed. For werewolves, the tongue symbolizes communication and the fangs symbolize strength. When Nine's fangs and tongue were removed, he became utterly powerless and alone in the werewolf kingdom, reminding Melissa of her anger towards Jack and Maizen. A few moments later, a rumbling sound comes from within the forest, revealed to be a big red wheel rolling quickly towards Melissa. Everyone braces themselves for an attack. But to Melissa's shock, the big red wheel stops rolling and turns out to be Jack, who has been rolling at high speed. Jack collapses in pain on the ground. Jack feels dizzy and sprawls on the ground after rolling around at high speed. He quickly stands up, grumbling angrily about being asked to greet guests by being kicked out and rolling like that. Melissa greets Jack, but he responds indifferently. Seeing this, Melissa threatens that if Jack doesn't show respect, she'll carve a cursed star on his fangs again. Jack immediately falls silent, seemingly convinced that the star carved with Melissa's magic sword indeed has a curse. In her heart, Melissa hopes Jack will continue to behave because she's not here to fight today. As small talk, Melissa asks why Jack came out to greet her in such a hurry. Jack answers irritably, saying it's all because of what Nine shouted. Melissa doesn't understand what Jack means, but guesses that Nine must have shouted some kind of threat. She finds it hard to believe that sweet Nine would threaten anyone. However, Jack, as if knowing what Melissa is thinking, says that she's wrong if she thinks a werewolf who has awakened will remain innocent. Hearing this, Nine gives Jack a threatening look, making him stop mid-sentence out of fear. But when Melissa looks, Nine's expression instantly turns sweet again. Melissa recalls how Jack used to mock Nine and constantly threatened to kill him, and Nine never dared to retaliate. But now, Jack is afraid of Nine, showing that in the werewolf world, the weak must bow to the strong. Melissa reminds Jack that she sent a letter a month ago requesting permission to visit, and since Jack didn't refuse, she asks him to escort her to the werewolf palace. Jack then faces the forest and shouts for it to be opened. A moment later, a path appears leading into the werewolf forest. As they walk through the werewolf forest, Melissa asks Yuri if she's okay, considering the possibility that her mana flow might be disturbed by the werewolf charms. Yuri replies that she's fine because all the werewolf charms have been removed from the forest. In her heart, Melissa is actually asking to ensure Yuri isn't traumatized since she was once kidnapped and held in the werewolf residence. But Yuri seems to be doing just fine. Yuri feels happy that Melissa is worried about her, but Nine, seeing their closeness, looks jealous and pouts. Yuri deliberately hugs Melissa and teases Nine. Behind Melissa, Nine and Yuri continue their Cold War. Yona, seeing their behavior, tries to stay away to avoid getting involved. A while later, they reach the Photon family palace, and Melissa is surprised by the vast meeting room. Jack explains that the room is used by the chief of werewolves. Melissa asks if Jack is the current chief of werewolves, and Jack confirms this, imagining Melissa will admire him because only the strongest can be chief. But suddenly, there's a loud noise from the ceiling as someone crashes through and kicks Jack. Someone with such a dramatic entrance breaking through the ceiling can only be Mizan Photon. Melissa greets Mizan, but he glares threateningly, making Nine, Yuri, and Yona prepare to use their powers. Melissa reminds Mizan why he didn't return her greeting. But Mizan retorts, asking why Melissa dares to come back after nearly dying there before. Melissa replies that she isn't afraid. She knows her body is weak, and to defeat Mizan before, she had to sacrifice herself, but that doesn't mean she should avoid the place out of fear. Yuri and Nine also have trauma and bad memories there, but they aren't scared and are ready to fight alongside Melissa. Therefore, Melissa is confident that they are stronger and, if necessary, can defeat Mizan again. Mizan is annoyed by Melissa's bold words. Melissa suggests they continue their discussion sitting down to be more comfortable. However, Mizan immediately sits and says that unfortunately, Melissa will have to stand because there are no servants around to get her a chair. They all ran away when they heard Melissa's name. Melissa realizes that since Mizan can't win against her team in a show of strength, he's trying to assert dominance by making her stand during the discussion, as if she's reporting to a superior. Melissa asks for the chair Mizan is sitting on, but Mizan argues that the chair is only for the chiefs. Melissa, with a threatening expression, reminds him that leaving a guest standing is very rude. Still, Mizan insists the chair can't be given up so easily. Strangely, Jack finds himself captivated, his heart racing as he watches Melissa's fierce expression. Melissa thinks about what to do, knowing she needs to keep the peace to secure support for the war, but she can't let Mizan's behavior slide. Suddenly, Yuri jumps in saying Mizan should move or become Melissa's chair himself. Everyone is stunned by Yuri's words. Melissa notes how different Yuri's character is now compared to the original novel. Nine also speaks up, rejecting Yuri's idea, saying Mizan should be honored if Melissa sits in his chair. This barrage of words overwhelms Mizan. Melissa then calms Yuri and Nine, saying Mizan can keep his chair if he wants it so badly, but she'll sit on the deer statue instead. Mizan, however, objects, saying the deer statue is special. Melissa says she has no other choice since there are no other chairs. As she's about to ask Nine to help her up, Nine already understands and lifts her, placing her on the deer statue. Melissa blushes. Mizan shouts for Melissa to get down, while Jack laughs at the whole scene. Melissa refuses to get down, saying she's comfortable, leaving Mizan speechless. Melissa starts the discussion, explaining that a monster attack is imminent. As she predicted, Mizan doesn't believe her. It's hard to convince others without solid proof. Only Nine and Yuri trust Melissa's prediction about the monster attack. Jack asks if the monsters can be hunted, and Melissa explains that they can. In fact, the hunting competition Jack once participated in was originally a monster hunting event. Melissa adds that if the werewolves help in the war against the monsters, there will be rewards. Still, Mizan refuses. Melissa is almost out of patience and ideas to persuade Mizan peacefully. She's even considering using force. But Jack openly disagrees with Mizan's decision, showing interest in hunting the monsters. Melissa is surprised that Jack, who was previously subordinate to Mizan, now dares to oppose him. Jack reminds Mizan that he can't make decisions alone anymore because Mizan is no longer the sole chief. Mizan and Jack are arguing, and Melissa realizes that unlike before, they're talking to each other as equals. Melissa asks if Mizan is no longer the chief. Jack explains that they now share the position because Jack defeated Mizan. However, Mizan disagrees, saying Jack didn't kill him, unlike how Mizan had to kill the previous chief to take the position. Seeing the two werewolves bickering, Melissa asks them to stop, saying there are more important issues to discuss. But Jack insists that deciding who the chief is the most important matter and suggests they fight again, with Melissa present, to determine the strongest. Melissa, with a terrifyingly threatening expression, asks Jack to calm down, and he immediately complies. In her mind, Melissa concludes that despite her predictions, Jack, now a co-chief, is willing to help her. Although it's unfortunate that Mending, who holds the same position as Jack, is not willing to assist, there's at least a possibility that the werewolves might join the war when the monsters attack. Feeling hopeful, Melissa decides against using force to get their help. Melissa gets down from her seat and informs them that the monster attack is predicted to happen in a week. She suggests Mending and Jack discuss their decision and meet her in Starbuck, the first town that will be attacked. As Melissa hurries to leave, Mending turns away to show his dislike. But Jack is surprised that she's leaving so soon and even escorts her out of the palace, inviting her to come back anytime she needs. Melissa thinks Jack's change in behavior is due to the etiquette lessons she gave him earlier. However, Nine and Yuri are annoyed, suspecting that Jack now likes Melissa. Melissa sighs, feeling both relief and anxiety as one more preparation is completed, but she still feels uneasy. As Melissa's team leaves the werewolf forest, a figure of a god hovers above, watching them. Yona suddenly looks up, sensing something, but sees nothing. As Melissa calls, Yona continues walking. The god's face shows frustration as he watches them go. The god is angry because his carefully laid plans are falling apart. The female lead, who used to be obedient, is no longer following his script. The storyline and ending he prepared are now ruined. Therefore, the god decides to destroy everything to start a new story. The following day, at the Elizabeth family's residence where Yuri lives, Yuri suddenly senses something wrong. Meanwhile, at the Fadabrat residence, while Melissa and Nine are preparing to send soldiers to Starbuck, a female servant rushes in to announce that the monsters have broken their seal and are now loose in the world. Melissa is shocked because the monster attack is happening sooner than in the original novel. In Starbuck, the sky turns dark with loud rumblings. People are confused and panic as a giant black hole appears in the sky, releasing strange creatures. The monsters start attacking, causing chaos. Back with Melissa, she urgently searches for a horse to get to Starbuck. She's frustrated for not predicting the early attack, just like when Yuri was kidnapped. Coincidentally, Kartina arrives, and when told about the monster attack, she decides to help Melissa, making Melissa happy to have her skilled swordmaster join. Nine brings a horse for Melissa, but they hear a loud neigh from another horse in the stable, Black Veil. It's as if Black Veil is communicating with Melissa, saying she should ride him because he's the fastest horse in the Fadabrat family. Melissa feels strange understanding horse language but agrees to ride Black Veil. Starbuck is a city near Livden. Yuri, as the reincarnation of the Grand Sorcerer, is naturally hated by the monsters. Once the seal breaks, the monsters will head to Livden and pass through Starbuck. In the original scenario, the female lead is put in danger, giving male leads a chance to show their abilities. But Ian hasn't given permission to use his troops, and Jack probably doesn't even know the seal has broken. Jack is nowhere to be found. With no other choice, Melissa decides to protect Starbuck herself. Melissa prepares to leave on Black Veil. Kartina borrows another horse, and Yona, already on a horse, is ready to go. Melissa whispers to Nine to transform into his wolf form to keep his identity secret, and follow them to Starbuck. Before parting, Melissa strokes Nine's hair and cheek. Nine holds her hand, reminding her to stay safe because she's precious to him. Melissa's heart races at Nine's sweet words. She thanks him and wishes him safety too. Riding their horses, Melissa, Kartina, and Yona head to Starbuck. Nine watches them leave, promising to catch up soon. After Melissa goes, Nine feels an odd sense of foreboding. The god watches Melissa's departure and laughs, saying it's time for the end. Nine, in his wolf form, is sprinting through the forest to catch up with Melissa. He tries to reassure himself that Melissa will be fine. Since she got the magic sword, she has been training hard and is making incredible progress in her swordsmanship. Nine estimates that Melissa's current skills can match his own in his awakened state. A monster attacks Nine, but he easily defeats it. Then Nine transforms back into his human form and quickly puts on his clothes. From a hilltop, he looks down at the chaotic scene in Starbuck City, which is overrun by a massive monster invasion. The scale of the attack is far greater than 9 had anticipated, making him worry for Melissa. In the city, a monster is about to attack a mother holding her young son. Luckily, Melissa arrives just in time, defeating the monster with a single slash of her magic sword. She tells the woman to run to the nearest emergency shelter, and the mother and child quickly run off, thanking Melissa as they go. Melissa's sword skills, combined with her magic sword, allow her to defeat individual monsters without much trouble. However, the sheer number of monsters is too much for Melissa and her team to handle alone. She has already ordered Black Veil to fetch Jake and bring him back to help, but she has no idea when Jake will arrive. As Melissa continues fighting monsters, she is shocked to see a giant claw emerging from the black hole in the sky. Everyone in the city stares in disbelief. More of the monster's body emerges, revealing a 3-headed giant snake. From the rooftop, Melissa watches as the situation grows even more dire. Elsewhere, 9 is giving first aid to a man with a leg injury from a monster attack. He tells people that the Fodabrat family's first aid carriage is on its way to Starbuck, so they should leave the city and wait for it. 9 can't leave the injured man behind. After providing first aid, he hurries to find Melissa. Just then, the mother and child that Melissa had saved earlier run out of the city gates, asking 9 to help the brown-haired swordswoman who is fighting a giant snake monster alone. Before the mother can finish speaking, 9 sprints towards the city center. 9 is extremely worried about Melissa, especially after seeing the devastation in the city. Finally, he sees a sight that makes him stop in his tracks. Melissa's red cloak and brown hair whip through the air as blood splatters everywhere. At that moment, 9 remembers Melissa's promise to always protect him. Proving her promise was not just empty words, Melissa fights fiercely, destroying one of the giant monster's heads with her sword. Alone, she has already severed 2 of its heads, leaving only 1 remaining. The monster thrashes about, attacking with its massive tail, but Melissa deftly dodges all its strikes. 9 watches in awe as Melissa moves as if she is dancing with her sword. Melissa jumps high and cuts off the monster's last head. 9 clutches his chest, trying to calm his racing heart, and walks towards her. He wants to ask Melissa not to take such dangerous risks and to let him protect her instead. But after witnessing her in action, 9 realizes how strong and capable Melissa is, and he changes his mind. To 9, Melissa is not only his love and hero, but also his master, who always carves her own path with her effort. In his heart, 9 vows to always believe in and follow Melissa wherever she goes, ensuring she achieves all she desires. After catching up on each other's well-being, Melissa explains the current situation. Yona is evacuating people, and Cortina is fighting monsters on the other side of the city. They're all overwhelmed by the endless waves of monsters. However, Melissa remains optimistic. Now that 9 is there, and with reinforcements hopefully arriving soon after hearing about the monster attack, she believes they can handle it. In this fight, Melissa prioritizes quick victories. She uses any tactic she can, like throwing sand into the monster's eyes to make them easier to defeat with 1 strike. The monsters can not only fly but also shoot fire from a distance, forcing Melissa to dodge. Seeing Melissa under attack, 9 runs swiftly, leaping up buildings with agility until he reaches the flying monster and takes it down with his claws. Watching 9's impressive action, Melissa feels proud and happy because he has become so strong and reliable. Lost in her thoughts, she suddenly faces another flying monster shooting fire at her. Gripping her sword tightly with both hands, Melissa braces herself. As the monster shoots a large fireball, Melissa swings her magic sword like a baseball bat, hitting the fireball back and sending it flying into the monster, knocking it far away. Home run! Melissa is thrilled with her powerful magic sword. She feels immensely grateful to whoever created this overpowered item and for being able to use it effectively. But there are still too many flying monsters. Melissa picks up a stone and throws it, taking down another monster, but there are still too many. She struggles to find high enough ground to reach and attack the flying monsters. In a moment of distraction, a monstrous snake tries to attack Melissa from behind and almost bites her. Suddenly, a mana bullet pierces the monster's head. Someone with a mana gun has saved Melissa. Looking around, she spots a bright light coming from a distant tower. Simultaneously, several monsters around Melissa are taken out by mana bullets. It's Jake, managing to control multiple mana guns at once. Melissa feels slightly relieved that Jake has arrived to help. She is also impressed by Jake's sniping skills from such a long distance, proving his worth as a male lead. 9 reports that he has finished off all monsters around them. Melissa feels proud of 9 and suggests they take a short break before the next wave of attacks. Yona arrives with her crystal ball and reports that all the residents have been evacuated. Yona's crystal ball also has the ability to reduce the monster's vision, although its area of effect is not very large. Still, it has been very useful in saving many residents from monster attacks. While resting, 9 comes over to Melissa and wipes her cheek with a handkerchief. Despite fighting through all the blood splatter, 9 managed to keep the handkerchief clean, all for Melissa. As she feels her heart swell with affection, Melissa is startled by Yuri's voice calling her. The voice comes from Yona's crystal ball. Unfortunately, their communication is one way. Melissa can hear Yuri, but Yuri can't hear Melissa. Yuri informs her that the monster's seals have broken, but most sorcerers, including Yuri's father, are away for training. Since the monster attack happened earlier than expected, the sorcerers have not returned. Yuri has tried to contact the sorcerers but failed because they always cut off communication with the outside world during training. Yuri doesn't know when they will be back. Hearing this, Melissa recalls a similar event in the novel. It seems the creator designed the plot this way to put the female lead in danger. Yuri continues, saying that only she and her brother Robbie are available. They wanted to join Melissa, but Yuri sensed Melissa wouldn't want that, so they decided to just inform her. Melissa agrees with Yuri's decision. 9 asks why Yuri shouldn't come since healing magic would be useful now. Melissa feels conflicted about explaining the real reason. Knowing the novel's plot, she understands that Yuri, being the reincarnation of the Grand Sorcerer, naturally attracts monsters. The plan is to kill as many monsters as possible before it's safe for Yuri to come and reseal the monster world. In the original novel, Yuri participated in the monster war from the beginning but stayed safe thanks to the male leads fighting to protect her, even at great cost. Unfortunately, many civilians died in the story, emphasizing the male lead's strength. But Melissa, in this timeline, doesn't want many civilian casualties. She will fight with all her might to prevent that. Seeing Melissa's confusion, Yona helps by explaining that healers are usually targeted first in battles. Melissa agrees with Yona's explanation, especially since they are currently too few in number to protect Yuri. 9 understands the reasoning, but Melissa wonders to herself how Yona came up with such a good excuse. Through the magic orb, Yuri asks about Melissa's condition and requests to be informed immediately if anything happens to her so she can come and heal her. 9 reflexively responds that Melissa will not be hurt because he will always protect her. Yona reminds them that Yuri cannot hear them since Yona's orb cannot transmit their voices. Seeing how Yona and 9 always trust whatever she does without doubting her, Melissa promises them that one day, when everything is back to normal, she will explain what she knows to them, even though she doesn't plan to reveal that their world is actually inside a novel. Elsewhere, Cartana is panting after defeating many monsters. She is suddenly startled by what she sees in the sky, a massive 3-headed dragon emerging from a black hole. Lightning strikes from dark clouds, signaling the arrival of a formidable power. Back to Melissa's location. Seeing the sky getting scarier, Melissa predicts that the next wave of monster attacks will happen soon. Since Yona can remain unseen by the monsters, Melissa asks her to search around the city and save any residents who haven't been evacuated. 9 will stay in the area to fight monsters, while Melissa will check on Cartana, who hasn't reported back. Suddenly, a loud thunderclap booms above them. Melissa, 9, and Yona are shocked to see someone approaching. It's Jake, in a pitiful state, asking for help because Black Veil keeps chewing on his hair. Black Veil looks delighted, having gotten what he wanted. Melissa explains that she had sent Black Veil to fetch Jake, and it seems he did his job well. Jake pushes Black Veil's face away to stop his odd behavior. Jake whines, worried about Melissa being in such a dangerous place, making her shiver at his words. But Melissa senses something is off. And sure enough, when she looks up, she sees a massive dragon flying toward them. She is shocked because the boss monster hasn't appeared yet, but its minions are already so strong. Cartena runs toward Melissa, and at that moment, the dragon fires a ball of flame at her. Cartena leaps aside just in time. The explosion is enormous, but Cartena lands on the ground with a perfect roll like a skilled gymnast. With an innocent expression, Cartena explains that although she managed to cut off one of the dragon's heads, the dragon is too big and powerful for her to defeat alone, so she lured it to Melissa's location so they could defeat it together. Cartena notes that she realized when the dragon gets angry, it lands on the ground, which is when they can cut off its head. Cartena asks Melissa to distract it so she can finish it off. The dragon lands with a mighty crash, causing the ground to crack and split. The tremor disrupts Yona's balance, causing her magic orb to slip from her hands. In that crucial moment, Yona recalls Yuri's previous message. The magic orb can only be used by Yuri and Yona. And if Melissa is in grave danger, Yona must use the orb to summon Yuri. Understanding the orb's importance, Yona leaps to catch it before it shatters on the ground. Unfortunately, the dragon spots Yona and prepares to fire a ball of flame at her. Melissa remembers that, according to the original novel storyline, Yona Whitefall dies in the monster attack, while Melissa, the villainess, survives but loses everyone who ever supported her, leaving her feeling utterly lonely. Melissa, determined not to experience that loneliness again, bravely jumps in front of Yona to block the fireball shot by the dragon. The force of the fireball is so strong that it cracks against her magic sword. Melissa holds on with all her strength, praying that her sword can withstand the immense force. Luckily, the sword not only holds but also reflects the fireball back at the dragon, causing it to roar in pain from its own attack. Seeing the dragon distracted, Nine and Cartena quickly leap and strike, managing to cut off the other two heads and finally defeating the dragon. Yona, looking at Melissa's back as she protected her, feels deeply grateful. Melissa asks if Yona is okay, to which Yona replies that she owes Melissa her life. Melissa playfully responds that it's nothing. But if Yona really wants to repay her, she can do so with money. Yona, who loves money, immediately jokes that she'd rather give up her life than her money. Suddenly, Cartena calls out and asks Melissa to look at the sky. To their shock, more black holes are appearing, indicating that even more monsters are about to flood into their world. Cartena suggests they might not be able to handle such an overwhelming number of monsters and proposes retreating to gather reinforcements. In their moment of despair, Ian's voice booms out, commanding his soldiers to attack. Ian and the First Imperial Knights have finally arrived and joined the battle against the monsters. At the same time, a magical transportation circle appears on the ground, and werewolf warriors, along with Jack and Mizzen that are riding a lion-like monster, emerge from it. Melissa is relieved to see more of the male leads arriving, though Mizzen and Jack are still bickering. Mizzen complains about the steed Jack chose for him, saying it doesn't look fierce or smart enough. But Jack insists the lion monster is cool and huge, even naming it Fodabrate because it's wild and ugly. Jake, the sniper, takes a shot at Jack the werewolf, missing but annoying him. Jack is furious at Jake for daring to shoot at him from hiding. Melissa realizes that Black Veil and Jake have vanished. It seems Jake has found a good sniper spot. Cartena feels slightly relieved with the reinforcements, but Melissa notices the knights' numbers seem fewer than expected. Ian arrives on horseback, apologizing for the delay, explaining that it took time to convince various factions to mobilize the troops. Melissa acknowledges Ian's tardiness, but questions why he's here. Blushing, Ian admits he saw a massive dragon land in the city and rushed to help Melissa, thinking she might be in danger. Nine is annoyed by Ian's flirting, and Melissa is displeased by his attempt to create a romantic moment. Even if Ian regrets his past mistakes, it doesn't excuse his previous cruelty to her. Melissa thinks Ian is shameless for trying to rekindle their relationship. Before she can address Ian, Jack the werewolf greets her. Melissa responds, surprised he actually came. Jack assures her he always keeps his word, which irritates Nine and Ian. Ian interrupts, questioning why the Photon family's leaders are here. Jack replies they came at Melissa's request, telling Ian not to worry about them. Ian denies being scared, explaining he's just suspicious of the werewolves' allegiance, especially since one is riding a monster during a monster battle. Ian and Jack start arguing, frustrating Melissa. She can't believe they're fighting each other instead of the monsters. Reaching his limit, Jack kills his monster steed, telling Ian to stop his suspicions because the werewolves came to help Melissa out of goodwill. But Ian keeps arguing, now angering the entire werewolf team. Finally, Melissa yells, startling both Jack and Ian. She reminds them that now is not the time for infighting. Melissa questions Ian why there are fewer soldiers than expected. Ian explains that the high-ranking nobles complain about sending Imperial troops to a small town like Starbuck. They doubt the reports and question whether monsters have really attacked. These nobles delay Ian, and he can only bring the first Imperial Knight under the House of Fodabrat's charge for now. Nevertheless, reinforcements should eventually arrive once the nobles realize the seriousness of the situation. Next, Melissa turns to Jack. She questions why he took the time to adopt a monster instead of coming straight to help. Jack responds that he simply likes the look of the lion monster. Melissa scolds him for killing his newly adopted pet so easily, saying he should take better care of it. Melissa doesn't want to dwell on Jack and Ian's earlier bickering. She reminds everyone that if they don't want the world to end, they need to work together to defeat the monsters. After Melissa's speech, the monster hunt resumes. Despite occasional arguments between the Imperial troops and werewolf soldiers, they manage to fight harmoniously. The monster extermination is going well, making Melissa optimistic. She believes that once they defeat the monster minions, Yuri can attempt to seal the black hole portals. If Yuri succeeds, they can prevent the boss monster from appearing, ending the war and allowing everyone to return home safely. Just as Melissa feels hopeful, a voice from the sky declares that things won't end that easily. The battle pauses as everyone, including the monsters, stares at an enormous black hole forming in the sky. Melissa wonders if the boss monster is about to appear. Ian orders all soldiers and gunmen to prepare to attack the emerging monster. Despite her fading hope, Melissa tries to stay positive, thinking this might be a quicker way to end the war if they can defeat the boss monster right away. When the boss monster emerges, everyone is shocked. Not only are they scared, but also confused. They all turn to Melissa, questioning what is happening. The boss monster, the source of all the monsters named Bale, has a face strikingly similar to Melissa's. According to the original story, Bale should have large horns and bat-like membranous wings, looking like the embodiment of all evil. Melissa stands silent, and everyone asks why Bale looks like her. Melissa replies that she doesn't know and is just as curious about the resemblance. She can't believe what is happening and wonders if this is another trick by the gods. She ponders what she should do next. In her confusion, Nine comes over and places a reassuring hand on her shoulder. With a loving and trusting gaze, he calls Melissa's name, snapping her out of her daze. No matter what Bale looks like, Melissa refocuses and resolves to defeat him. Bale, looking like a giant version of Melissa, opens his eyes and loudly calls out Melissa Fodabrat's name. The voice is so powerful that Melissa loses her balance, needing Nine to steady her. Strangely, only Melissa can hear Bale. Nine can't. Bale grins down at Melissa and says, "No, wait. I should be calling you something else, shouldn't I? Dal Young Han." Melissa is shocked to hear her previous life's name. It is a name she has almost forgotten. She falls to her knees, deafened by a thunderous roar, unable to hear Nine calling her nearby. As if caught by Bale's enormous hand, Melissa finds herself immobilized and slowly enveloped by a black hole portal. Bale says he will take her somewhere else so they can talk privately without the noise of others. What trick is the god playing on Melissa now? Where is Bale taking her? We'll discuss this further in our next video. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and want us to continue. Thank you for watching, and we hope you enjoyed it.